Hi friends, this is a tutorial for the Midnight Sunset Crochet Baby Blanket. I am using 3 colors of Malabrigo Rios, which is what I used in the original pattern, but these are just sunset colors. There's no midnight for this particular tutorial. And the pattern calls for a 4.5mm crochet hook. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to start with this orange. I believe it's called Glazed Carrot. And the pattern calls for chaining a multiple of 26 plus 13. So for this tutorial, I'm going to do that exact number. So 26 plus 13, we're going to chain 39. So go ahead and make your slip knot and begin chaining. So this pattern, I think, looks a little complicated. There's a lot going on. We've got chain 12 loops that are connected. That's the Jacob's ladder stitch. We have granny stitches, and we have columns of front post treble crochet to kind of separate visually the vertical sections of different stitches we have, and so it looks awfully complicated. It doesn't really look memorizable, or maybe it doesn't look as memorizable as you would think, but once you get the pattern all set up, and it's going to take us several rows to get it set up, once we get to row 5, then it becomes a 2-row repeat, and there's lots of great hints along the way that we can look at to read our work and thus make it a more memorizable pattern. So let me just count real quick, see where I'm at. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36. Ooh, I'm so close. 37, 38, 39. All right, now go ahead and just half double crochet in, you're gonna half double crochet in the second chain from hook and each of the next 5 chains. So in 6 stitches total. So go ahead and yarn over, insert your hook. I like to go in the back bump, so if you just turn your chain towards you, here's your back bump. Insert your hook, pull up a loop, and yarn over and pull through all 3. So there's your first half double crochet. We'll do that in the first 6 stitches here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now we're going to start creating our first chain 12 loops that will eventually become those Jacob's ladder sections. So you've completed that 6th half double crochet, just chain 12. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Now we're going to slip stitch back into the top of this stitch. So the way I liked to do it as I worked up the pattern, I went not just in the very top of the stitch here, but I went in through, if I could grab it, the body of the stitch as well. Alright, so you can see here I'm in the top of the stitch and in these legs here. And then you just yarn over and pull through all 4 loops that you had on the hook. So if I just set that down for a minute, you can see, I'll even pull the hook out. You've got that loop connected, And I just think it looks a little more neat when you go all the way through the stitch like that. I can even hold it a little closer, because then your tail is ready to go on the outside of that stitch. If you're looking at this and you're like, that seems complicated, can't I just go in the top of the stitch? You can, that's fine. It will still look lovely, and if you test it out and you're like, I'm not a big fan, then you know, you got the option. The pattern's not gonna fall apart if you decide to just go in that very top stitch, top of the stitch right there. All right, so there's our first chain 12 loop, the beginnings of a Jacob's ladder. Now the pattern says half double crochet in the next 26 chains. So I'm gonna have to do a little counting. I'm not a big fan of patterns where you have to do a whole lot of counting, but in the setup rows, just in the setup rows of this pattern, you'll have to count a little bit. But then, believe me, later on you'll be cruising because you'll have it memorized. So go ahead and half double crochet in the next 26 chains. In our swatch, we'll do the next 26 chains, and then we're going to, that's all we're doing for the repeat, because then we'll round out this first row. But there's only one time we have to count to 26 for the purposes of this video. Oh, sorry, my hands are off the camera. Hopefully it's pretty straightforward though to just half double crochet across. Slowly but surely. Of course, working into the turning chain, sorry, not just the turning chain, the foundation chain is always a slower part of the pattern. If you are a fan of foundation stitches, like beginning your pattern just with all foundation half double crochet and noting where those chain 12 loops happen along the way, you are totally welcome to do that. I kind of prefer to just do the starting chain and work into it. That's just like my personal preference, but again, you're totally welcome to do your foundation chain. Okay, I think we're getting close. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. Let me go ahead and see where we're at. Okay, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. Fabulous. All right, so now we half double crocheted into the next 26, chain 12. So let's make one more of those chain 12 loops for our sample. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And go ahead and slip stitch join, working into the top of the stitch, and again, my personal preference, going through the body of the stitch too. So you've got the 4 loops on your hook, or just into the very top of the stitch if you would like, and slip stitch join. Now you will simply half double crochet in the last 6 chains. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6. All right, so now we are going to join our next color. Here's our little, again, here's our sample so far with our chain 12 loops. I am going to join this lovely yellow color next. I believe it's called Sunset. And to join the next color here, I am just looping it over the hook, pulling through, tightening the tail of the yarn I just left behind, so that orange. So that's how we join, and then I'm going to do a chain 1, tighten that guy up a little bit too, and turn. All right. Now we are on to row 2. So row 2, we are going, this is a wrong side row, we're going to double crochet in the first 13, pushing these chain 12 loops away from our work towards the right side of the work. Sorry, away from us towards the right side of the work. So go ahead, yarn over, insert your hook, pull through 2 to make our double crochet. I'll do that a little slower in case this is a newer stitch to anybody, but insert the hook, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. I imagine folks tackling this pattern probably know double crochet, but just in case, it doesn't hurt to slow down a little bit. Alright, so what I mean when I say push those loops away from you, here I've worked into the first 6. We're going to push this, make sure it is behind our working yarn. And just so it's a little clearer to show, here's the top of the stitch right before the chain 12 loop, and then we're working into this guy next. So again, push that away and work your double crochet in the next stitch. All right. And that just keeps the loops on the correct side, the right side of the work. All right, so I believe it said, yeah, double crochet in the first 13. So it's 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Now we're going to get our granny sections, our granny stitch sections set up. So, all right, now we're gonna skip 3 stitches and work 3 double crochet between the last skipped stitch and the next stitch. So here, it's a little hard to see because, you know, the stitches slant here in crochet. It's a little hard, especially with half double crochet. It almost looks like the body of this stitch is in between the tops of the stitches. So it's a little hard to see, but if we go back and count this first row here, we could go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Then we'll skip 1, 2, 3. See if I can get my camera to focus. All right, so we skipped 3 stitches. Now we're working between the last skipped stitch and the next stitch, and we're going to place 3 double crochets in between. So just work right in between the posts of those 2 half double crochets and place 3, the posts of the half double crochets, and place 3 double crochets in between. All right, you're going to repeat that. Well, you're going to do that 3 times. So that was the first time. Now skip 3, and again, working between those posts of the last skipped stitch and the next. Work your double crochet cluster. So 3 double crochets in that same space. Let's see if I can tuck this yarn over here so it's a little easier to see what I'm doing. All right, and same thing, skip 3, working in between the posts of those stitches. Place your cluster. Now, if you are adjusting the width of this project, the way I am for this sample, the reason it's a repeat of 26 plus 13 is we want to make sure our granny sections are framed out by our Jacob's ladder sections, because the granny sections are going to be staggered. We'll have 3 clusters one row, 4 clusters another row, 3 clusters, 4 clusters, 3 clusters, 4 clusters, and so it's just easier if that's not also going to land on the edge of your project. So that's just an aside about that. All right, now we are going to skip 3, and then we're going to double crochet in the last 13. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Sweet. So again, just to make sure I'm putting my hook in the right spot, skip 3, double crochet in the last 13. I think I went under too many loops of that stitch there. Yeah, all right. And again, when you approach that chain 12 loop, you will push it away from you towards the right side of the work. So push it away and work into that next stitch. All right. Okay, last one. All right, now we are going to join our next color, which is this lovely peach color. I think this one is just called Peachy. All right. Again, we're going to join it in the same way we joined the yarn in the last row, which is simply loop it over. Always leave a long enough tail. I should have said that, at least 6 inches. And then loop it over the hook and pull it through. Tighten up the yarn you just left behind, so that yellow. Chain 1 and turn. All right, now you're going to have some yarn maintenance because we've got 3 skeins attached. But don't worry, with only 3 skeins attached, it doesn't get too messy. It's pretty easy to untangle. This just takes a little getting used to. If you have 5 skeins attached, and I've done a few patterns like that, that gets a little more tangly. But in my opinion, worth it to not have to weave in a zillion ends. All right, now we're on row 3. Row 3 says you're going to half double crochet in your first 6 stitches. Somehow, some way, here we go. One, two, three, four, 5, 6. All right, so now we're right on top of that loop from before. Go ahead and chain 12. And slip stitch join. Again, I like to go through all those loops, but you could probably just slip stitch to the top and be just fine. Now you will half double crochet into the next 6, because this is the row where we're starting we're going to make our front post treble crochets to add some visual distinction between our Jacob's ladder sections and our granny stitch sections. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now we are going to front post treble crochet around the next half double crochet 2 rows below, which that lands, it's right beside, okay, so we've got our clusters here for this granny stitch section. So here's our 3 stitches that form the cluster next to this guy. Here is the stitch we want to work into. So right next to those 3, it's right after this stitch we just worked into. To front post treble crochet, you yarn over twice. Then insert your hook around the post of that stitch. So you're bringing it towards you to the front, making it a front post stitch. Yarn over and pull up a loop. You should have 4 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through 2. Somehow, some way, I think I just split that stitch. Okay. Yarn over and pull through 2. Yarn over and pull through 2. And now you've got this textural raised stitch to add a little visual separation between this section of stitches and our granny section. All right, now we are going to work some clusters basically everywhere you see a gap right now. So cluster, 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 cluster. We are going to work 4 double crochet clusters in between each of the next clusters. So go ahead and working into that space. Place 3 double crochets and 3 double crochets, three double crochets, and 3 more double crochets. All right, now to further continue to visually distinguish between our granny stitch sections and our Jacob's ladder sections, we are going to place another front post treble crochet in the next stitch 2 rows below. So here's this cluster of 3 that we just worked another cluster above. Here's the next post stitch. I know it looks really slanty. I think that's just kind of the nature of half double crochet especially, but we're going to isolate this next stitch 2 rows below for our post. So yarn over twice, insert your hook, bringing that post of the stitch towards you. Yarn over, pull up a loop. You have 4 loops on your hook. Yarn over, pull through 2. Yarn over, pull through 2. Yarn over, pull through 2. All right. Now we are going to double crochet, half double crochet into the next 6 stitches. So skip the stitch behind the post just worked. I'm not sure I emphasized that last time around, but you're skipping that stitch, then half double crocheting in each of the next 6 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And here we are above that chain 12 loop again, so there's a good signal that it's chain 12 loop time. So go ahead and chain 12. And slip stitch join to the top of your half double crochet most recently worked. Then half double crochet in the last 6 stitches of the row. All right, now, so we already have our 3 colors attached. In order to move forward with the next row, simply pull up the loop of the yarn that is still attached to the ball. Don't grab the tail, you don't want that. Bring it up to the height of the current working row and yarn over, pull through. Again, tug on your yarn you just left behind, making sure that this orange, color A, is still about at the same height. You don't want it to pucker, because then your edges are going to pucker. It's much better to have way too much. Like if you have that much, that's better than it, puckering and now your work is curling and it might block out, but let's just leave enough room for that loop. All right, gotta tighten up the peach again. Chain 1 and turn. All right, row 4 is where the repeat begins. Our 2-row repeats. So get excited, we're almost done setting up the pattern. Here's the 2-row repeat that begins. So you're gonna go ahead and double crochet in the first 13 stitches, pushing your chain 12 loops to the front of your work. So that's, you'll just go across. All right, and now we're pushing that loop away. Yarn over, insert. I don't know why I said that. You guys know how to double crochet by this point in the video tutorial. But you're inserting, just around. If it's helpful to show this visual, you can see where the loop, there's some like extra bulk here. And you can see from the previous row, there's that extra bulk as well. But that will just, it kind of disappears. But it just lands in between those stitches. So, all right, go ahead and keep crocheting along. All right. So we're getting close. The last stitch of these 13 double crochets you will be doing is going to be working into the back of the front post treble crochet. That's right over there. So that's how you know. You don't have to, at this point in the pattern, you don't have to actually, in my opinion, count these 13 stitches, because the last stitch should be into the back of that front post treble crochet, and then you'll know that that's the right stitch too, because then you're going to hit your first cluster stitch, your first 3 double crochets in the cluster. So you go in the first 13 slash, you work until you get to this double crochet cluster, then skip the cluster, 3 double crochets between the next 2 clusters. Here's our classic granny stitch, and repeat 3 double crochets between the next 2 clusters. And 3 double crochets between the next 2 clusters. All right, now we're going to skip this last cluster and do another 13 double crochets. If you're following the pattern and you're making a wider project than this, there'll be 14 double crochets. The reason why, for the sections of Jacob's ladder that fall between granny sections, is because here's our front post treble crochet. We don't have that on the end here, so that's why it's just 13 stitches that frame out the blanket that are the columns on each end. But if you're in the middle and you hit this Jacob's ladder section, when you read the pattern, it'll say go in the next 14 stitches, because there'll be another front post treble crochet and then your granny section. Just in case that's confusing. Maybe it was more confusing for me to say all that, and it would be easier to just, you know, follow the pattern or whatever, but just thought I would address that in case you're reading the pattern, you're like, wait, all I'm hearing are 13s in this video, but the pattern has sections where you're going to double crochet in the next 14. So all right, we're approaching that chain 12 loop. Go ahead and push it to the right side of the work. Away from us, because this is the wrong side. And continue on. So in a way, you can think about your wrong side rows as entirely double crochet rows. The only reason it's not written as, you know, just double crochet across is because we have our clusters here. And so since there are half double crochet stitches in the pattern as well, I think it's helpful if you're having trouble memorizing, your wrong side rows are all double crochet, and it's almost like double crochet across. Just think of that in your head. Of course, you'll get to your granny stitch sections and you'll know, okay, you're not going to double crochet. You're not literally going to double crochet across into the top of the stitches, because that would break up the granny pattern. But all of these that you're working are double crochets. So I hope that's helpful when it comes to memorizing the pattern. All right, so now go ahead and bring up your gold. You know what color to bring up, a couple reasons. One, it's 2 colors behind, so it's the yellow came after the orange, so we're going to continue in that pattern. But 2, all that's right here available is a tail. So you know you can't pick up that color because it's just a tail that's not attached to the working yarn. So it's really a nice thing. You don't have to stress about, oh, wait, I'm confused. What color do I pick up? There's only one available. There's only one option. So it makes the pattern a little more mindless to follow. So again, we're just bringing up that loop, attaching it, chain 1, and turn. All right, row 5. You can see there's a little bit of tangling going on now. And again, it's not so bad to untangle it, and still pretty easy to work with the yarn, even when it's all tangled together. You can still kind of pull your current working yarn through the tangles. Okay, so go ahead for row 5, half double crochet in the first 6. All right. Apologize, my hands do keep going off the camera. Hopefully not at any crucial parts of the tutorial though. All right, go ahead and chain 12. Slip stitch join. Half double crochet in the next 6. And then I'm going to point something out that will also helpfully make this pattern a bit more memorizable as well. There's something interesting about the Jacob's ladder stitch. Even though you're chaining 12 and connecting to the top of the same stitch, if you look at it laid out, it almost looks like you're connected to the next stitch. See how it's like, it does look like it's a little further over, almost like it could be the top of that next stitch. And I want you to think about it that way because it's going to help with remembering numbers. So this whole pattern, I want you to keep the number 12 in mind. Why? Because this is 12 stitches right here. We have a chain 12. Traditionally, the Jacob's ladder is only a chain 10. I'm doing a 12 so that it's helpful to memorize this pattern. So we've got a section of 12 stitches. You do your 6 stitches, chain 12 here, and then your next 6 stitches. It's right in the middle of your 12 stitches. Okay, now we have our separator, which is our front post treble crochet. So go ahead and work that stitch. And actually, let me point out before I go into it. Now we're working our front post treble crochets around the front post treble crochet bar. In the pattern from here on out, it's called the bar because it's just this bar stitch that's jutting out. It should be really easy to isolate. Look at how tall that is. And you are just going around that post and working your front post treble. So super easy to locate. Now our sections of granny stitches, going back to the number 12, we have our 4 clusters here, 4 times 3, 12. Then, yeah, we only have 9 here when we're working the wrong side of the pattern. That's fine, but the whole section is 12 stitches wide. It's just every other row you're only working in these gaps, so you got 9. But the max width, I should say, is 12. So hopefully that's helpful to keep in mind. And then again, like your future sections, so say we made a wider swatch and there was another section of granny stitch over here. You would have your 12 double crochets separated in the middle by your chain 12 loops, and then another bar separator. So I guess like technically the repeat is a multiple of 13 because we have to include our separators, our bars, in the stitch count for it to be accurate. But mentally, if you keep in mind the number 12, I think it will help you to memorize this pattern and to read your work and see, okay, that's right, 12 double crochets, separator, 12 granny stitches, or like 12 stitches to make up my granny section, separator, 12. And again, the chain 12 loops is by design to help make it more memorizable. So again, we're going to work our granny clusters. Visually, it should be really easy to see where you should be placing the granny stitches at this point. It's really where there's like a gap. Again, on the right side, we've got the 12. On the wrong side, well, I guess what I could say too is on the right side, you've got 4 granny clusters. On the wrong side, you have 3, which fit in between the 4 granny clusters from the other side. I'm rambling a bit at this point, and maybe just being confusing. So, but I at least hope keeping in mind the number 12 will be helpful. So that, again, even though this pattern kind of has a lot going on with front post treble crochets, granny clusters, the chain 12 loops, the double crochets in some of the rows, half double crochets in some of the rows, hopefully it's helpful to keep in mind the those numbers. So again, when we're working post stitches, we always skip the stitch behind, so otherwise we'll increase accidentally, and then go ahead and continue. We'll do 6 half double crochets to finish out this row. Well, 6 double crochets and then a chain 12. Something I could have mentioned sooner is try not to twist the chain when you go to slip stitch join. It's not a crisis if you do, but it just looks like a pinch neater if you can keep it from twisting. And then, yeah, half double crochet in the last 6. And that is your repeat. All right, so we've gotten this far in the pattern. Let me lay it out so we can take a look. See if I can rearrange a few things. We've got all the yarn tails, just so we can see. All right, we've got the whole thing fitting nicely right there. Look at those beautiful warm colors. All right, so for rows 6 through 86, if you're making the baby blanket, you're repeating rows 4 and 5. So you're gonna end on row 4 of the repeat before we have to finish it out. So we're not just doing the repeat and that's the end of the pattern, because we've got to connect the loops and tack them down. So in order to do that, we need to end on row 4 of the repeat. So I'll probably just pause this video and come back after I do another wrong side row. Yeah, I'll do that. I'll be back. All right, so what I went ahead and did was I completed another wrong side row, which is this guy right here. And then I completed what is row 87 of the pattern, or the second to last row. I didn't do that on camera because although it's different than what we've done so far, it's very simple. Basically, you are just doing a right side row of the pattern without chain 12 loops. So here you can see half double crochet in the first 12, front post treble, granny stitches, front post treble, half double crochet in the next 12. So there's just no chain 12 loops in between. Now we're getting ready for the very last pattern, or last row of the pattern. But before we do that, we have to connect our chain 12 loops. So throughout the pattern, you can just leave them hanging. You can connect them as you go, but chances are, with handling the blanket, or whatever you might be making, the stitches will just fall out. So it's kind of nice to just save it all for the end. So what we do to connect our loops is pull the second from the bottom loop through the bottom loop. So all you do is push that loop through the bottom loop and pull up and continue. Grab this loop, pull it through the next loop, and so on and so forth until you get to the top loop. And then there you go. There's that beautiful braided effect. It almost looks like it could be crochet cables without cabling, or just chain 12 loops. All right, let's do the same thing over here. So again, pulling the second from the bottom through the bottom first, and then the next stitch, so on and so forth. Now, if it sounds confusing to be like, pull the second from the bottom through what? You can't do it the other way. It won't work. Like if you try pulling this stitch through the bottom stitch, then you have a dead end. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Great. So now we've done that. We're gonna go ahead and do our final row, which is a wrong side row. So we'll pick up our next color, which is the gold. Join, chain 1 and turn. All right, so you're gonna double crochet in the first 5 this time. So we have to do a little more counting, a little more paying attention again, just for this final row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Next, in each of the next 2 stitches, you're going to double crochet, but also we're going to tack down the loop. So you're going to go in through the stitch and through the loop, this top loop, from the other side. So just pull that loop up to the top. Well, maybe do your yarn over first and insert it into the double crochet and grab that loop. And tighten up your yarn if you need to. And go ahead and do your double crochet. And then same thing in the next stitch. Double crochet through the top of the stitch and through the big loop. And then double crochet in the next 6. And that 6th stitch you're double crocheting into is the front post treble crochet, the back of the front post treble crochet. Which is this guy right there. And then you'll work into your cluster stitches as you have been. So skip this cluster, 3 double crochets in between each of the next 3 clusters. Okay, and then You'll double crochet in the next 6. 1, 2, 3. So this first stitch here is the back of that front post treble. And then the next, 5 after that. Now, once again, we've got these 2 middle stitches. We're going to double crochet into the top of this stitch and grab that loop, double crochet into the stitch and through the loop to tack it down. Do the same in the next stitch. All right, and then double crochet in the last 5. Okay. So now you can see these beautifully tacked down loops. And it even works out that it gets tacked down in the same color as the last loop. That's no matter how many repeats you do. That's how it shakes out, because we're doing it in 3 colors. Oh, all right. So that is the pattern. There's also a border, the camel stitch border, which I love. So let's go ahead and get into it. So what we're gonna do is join this color. So in the pattern, like B is what ends up being your border color. It works out that you will have the color ready to go that is your border. Which is nice, because then it's less ends to weave in. So you will cut your other yarns. You'll cut the other yarns and you can weave in your other colors if you want to now, or just leave the ends dangling and weave them in later. I'm not going to cut them right now for this tutorial. But to do your border, we are going to, you'll be ready to go in the upper right hand corner. And the whole border is worked right side facing. So go ahead and single crochet across. Whoops, golly, I'm totally off the camera now. I'm so sorry. But should be pretty straightforward to just single crochet across the top of your work. Once we get to the corner, I'll show you what to do in the corner, and then I will meet you around. So you don't have to just watch, I don't know, 10 minutes of me single crocheting around this swatch. That's not very entertaining. And yeah, so at this point you're just working into the tops of your granny stitches, you know, no working in between the clusters or anything. Alright, and then when we get to our corner, which we will be there soon, you are going to single crochet, chain 2, single crochet, all in the same spot. And then I strongly prefer to use stitch markers and an abundance of them with this particular border, but really with all borders, to mark the corner. So it's easy to see where you're at. So just get yourself some locking stitch markers. I prefer silicone ones. I feel that they are less breakable. Not that I have any experience with breaking stitch markers or anything, but you'll do your chain 2 and just wrap your chain 2 with your locking stitch marker. And single crochet again in the same space. Then you'll work along the side. In the pattern, I give specific stitch counts for your sides so that the border lays flat. Basically, as you work along the side, aim to place 4 single crochets for every 3 row ends. So each row is a different color, so that's pretty easy to identify. So for these 3 row ends, try to place 4 single crochets. And then the most important things to note when working along the sides, 2 things. Try to get into a stitch instead of going into like a in-between stitches, because then you're just going to end up with big holes if you go around the stitch. You want to go into the stitch, like grab a leg of this stitch here, for example, and do that, so that, again, just so you don't end up with massive holes. And then the other most important thing to note, we have all these floats from carrying our yarn up the sides. You want to enclose those floats while you work along the sides so that they don't show. That's kind of the whole point. All right. They'll still peek through like a teensy tiny bit, but it's very not noticeable, in my opinion. And again, just like so worth it to not have to have a zillion ends to weave in at the end of the pattern. And then just try to like actually get into a stitch and not just around the yarn floats. It'll just be a little more secure. All right. It's always fiddly working into the sides, but it's a necessary evil for that foundation round of your first border, or your first round of the border. All right, and then over here, once again in the corner, and for here I'm just going to go into that first stitch of the excuse me, of the bottom of the blanket, that chain, single crochet, chain 2, place marker, single crochet. And then the glorious thing about working into the back bumps, when we did that in the start, is now this bottom looks kind of like the top of a blanket. You can see all the V's, and it's really easy to identify where to place your hook. Otherwise it looks kind of like twisty, which is fine, but I just love the ease of how similar the bottom looks to the top of stitches when you work into the back bump of your chains. All right, at this point I am going to finish single crocheting around, and I will meet you at that starting corner. All right, so we've made it around the swatch for the border, except we just need to close off this corner. So what I did was I single crocheted into the same stitch as that very first single crochet of the row, or round, chain 2, place that last stitch marker, and slip stitch join to the first single crochet of the round. Then we'll chain one, and we're going to half double crochet back into the starting corner. So working behind the stitch we just created, you'll yarn over, insert your hook back into the marked corner, pull up a loop, and complete the half double crochet. And what that does is it keeps our seam in the corner. I find that a lot easier to keep track of than, you know, joining over here somewhere. Maybe you forget exactly where you left off, maybe you accidentally increase stitches. I find it much easier to keep our seam in the corner. All right, now what we're going to do is half double crochet in the back third loop of each stitch across. It's very fiddly this round because the back third loop in single crochet is this itty bitty teeny tiny thing. It's like half the width of this regular top of the loop. But you'll see why I prefer it. It creates this beautiful edge and it gets much easier in subsequent rounds. So go ahead and yarn over, turn your work towards you. We're going to actually go into this back third loop of this stitch right here. So turn the work towards you, find that little loop, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up that loop, and complete your half double crochet. Same thing, find that back third loop by turning your work towards you and complete the half double crochet. Now here I'm using my nails to get into this stitch. It is, maybe if you have a pointier crochet hook, you won't need to use your fingers to help you along the way, but you will not have to do that in subsequent rounds. It's just this first round that it's so fiddly. I love this border so much, the camel stitch border, but getting through the first two rounds, your setup round and then this one, is tedious, but again, the outcome is worth it in my opinion. You can already see if I lay this down flat, look at that pretty edge that we get from working in the back third loop. I like this because right away it gives you that visual distinction between the border and the rest of the work. Obviously here the color does too, but it gets us right into the look of the border without having like a kind of taller section of plain stitches where you're working into the top of the stitch as you ordinarily would, and then the pretty ridges starting. Those ridges start right from the get-go. And so let's just go ahead and get across slowly but surely to the corner so I can show you how the corners will look. And then I will meet you at the end of the round. Or perhaps I'll just pause and get to the corner now. All right, so here we are at the corner. We've worked into the back third loop of each stitch across. When you get to your corner, you'll simply half double crochet, chain two, and half double crochet in the corner. But I'm going to show you where I like to mark my stitches now. So what I just did, I did my first half double crochet of the corner, and I put a stitch marker in the back third loop. And the reason I did that is because in the past I have worked this border and somehow mystically increased stitches around the corners. I don't know how I did it, but then, you know, that obviously affects the look of the finished project. And so now I prefer to put a stitch marker in each of the back third loops of each corner of the half double crochets in each corner for a total of 8 stitch markers in the project, because I want to know without a doubt what are the first and last stitches of the round for the corners. So just to kind of show that, you know, in the front here, you can't even see your stitch markers, but back here, you can see, okay, these are the back third loops. I have a history of working into that guy. It kind of looks the same as the back third loops elsewhere, and that's where I would get the increasing and the extra bulk in the corners. So, you know, you can take this tip or leave it. It's just stitch markers are such a helpful tool, and this is how I avoid adding extra stitches in the corners. So I'm going to go ahead and go around the rest of this swatch. I'll meet you back at the starting corner. All right, so we are back at the starting corner. What I've done is I did my half double crochet into that same stitch as the first one of the round, chain 2, and then we will, you can pull that marker out, we'll slip stitch join to your first stitch of the round, and just into the top of it is fine. No need to go in the back loops. All right, now you are going to repeat round 2. So that's the border. So we'll chain 1, half double crochet back into that corner, and then I'm going to put my stitch marker in this back third loop. All right, then find the back third loop, which looks snug here just because of the nature of working backwards into that stitch. So go ahead, turn it toward you. I'll try to show you exactly where I'm seeing it. So here's the top of your stitch. And see, this is where I might have even used another stitch marker to make sure I didn't accidentally work into the like slip stitch join, because you can see kind of all of this going on right here. But we are going to work into the back third loop of this stitch right here. Again, that one's a little snug, but then it's about to get a whole lot easier. Again, no more fiddly using your fingernails to get into those stitches. Now we're cruising. And then, yeah, you're just repeating row 2. So half double crochet in the back third loop across. When you get to the corner, you will half double crochet chain 2, half double crochet into the chain 2 space. So actually, let's just real quick pretend we're already, you know, at this other end. We're half double crocheting into the back third loop of each stitch across. And then here we are getting to the corners, and oh, look, I can see exactly where my loops are that flank the corners. So I would half double crochet into this marked back third loop, and then I know, all right, time to work into the chain 2 corner space. I would move this marker up to the back third loop I just created, chain 2, half double crochet into that same corner, and then what I would probably do, see how this is still marked? I would work my next half double crochet into that marked corner so I know without a doubt where I was supposed to resume. Now I'm going to move that marker, but I'm going to move it 2 stitches back because I just worked 2 stitches. The one that was into the actual corner and then the one that came next. So that's where that one goes. And there we go, continuing right along. All right, now this looks like a little silly because I jumped ahead there, but you can see the beautiful ridges. You can especially see right over here the beautiful ridges created, and they just stack on top of each other. Your final round will be taller like that, but it kind of that's just the like finishing touch of that last round. All the other ones will stack really neatly on top of each other like that. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. It was a super long one, but hopefully it's given you all the details you need to complete this pattern for my visual learners. So thanks so much for stopping by, and I hope to see you again soon.